Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to show you how to crochet this really pretty puff stitch flower scarf or cowl. So this scarf can be made in any size, and for my scarf I used a 4mm crochet hook. So thank you very much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. To begin your scarf, you want to start off by doing a slip knot. So to do a slip knot, you want to take your yarn and you want to take your finger and you want to wrap the yarn around your finger once and then twice. Then take the first loop and pull it over the second loop, and then take the second loop and pull it all the way over your finger. You then want to take your crochet hook, go in through the space and pull tight, and there you have a slip knot. So once you have your slip knot, we are now going to make our foundation chain, and you can make your foundation chain as long or as short as you like, and the longer you make your chain, the longer or wider your scarf will be. So the longer you make it, the wider your scarf will be. And your foundation chain must be a multiple of 16. So you can chain any number as long as it is a multiple of 16. So start to make your foundation chain. So I have just finished making my foundation chain, and I ended up chaining 96, which is a multiple of 16. And you can see if I turn my chain into a loop, you can see how long or how wide my scarf or snood is going to be. So make sure that you have chained to the right length. And now before we begin round one, we are going to turn our foundation chain, which we have here, into a foundation ring. So what you want to do is you want to go all the way along to the bottom of your chain, making sure that you are very careful not to twist your chain in any places. So go right down to the bottom to the very first chain that you worked. So here we have our slip knot and our foundation chain, our first chain, and into this chain we are going to work a slip stitch, and that will turn our chain, which we have here, into a ring. So what you want to do is you want to insert your hook into this first chain, so the first chain that you worked. Then take your yarn and work a slip stitch. So to do a slip stitch, simply yarn over. So I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook to work a slip stitch. And there you can see we have turned our foundation chain into a big ring. And I would go back and make sure that your ring is not twisted in any places, as it is very easy to do. And if it is, just undo your slip stitch and redo it. And once you have done that, we are ready to begin round one. So we are now moving on to round one. And to begin round one, you want to chain one. And this chain one does not count as a stitch. So now round one is just a simple round of double crochet. We're just going to do one double crochet into each stitch around our foundation chain or our foundation ring. So one double crochet into each chain. So we're going to work our very first double crochet into this first chain here, as our chain one does not count as a stitch. So to do a double crochet, you want to yarn over and go down into the very first chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the final 2 loops on your hook. So there we have one double crochet, and you want to do that into every single chain along. So yarn over and go down into the next chain, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through the final 2 loops on your hook. So there we have another double crochet, and just do this all the way around, one double crochet into each chain. So I have just finished working that all the way around for round one, and at the end of this round you should have the same number of double crochets around as you chained in the beginning. So for my foundation chain I chained 96, and therefore I should have 96 double crochets in round 1. So I would go back and make sure that you have the same number as you chain, and once you have done that, you want to finish off round 1 by working a slip stitch into the first double crochet that you worked. So here is the first double crochet that we worked. Make sure that you're not going into the chain 1, you're going into the double crochet. Insert your hook into this chain and yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. So there we have a slip stitch to finish off round 1, and now we're ready to begin round 2. So we are now on to round 2 of our scarf, and to begin round 2 you want to chain 1, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So now we're going to do 1 double crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. So we're going to start off this round by doing 12 double crochets. So you want to work your first double crochet into this first stitch here, as our chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So yarn over and go down into this first stitch and work 1 double crochet. Then we're going to work our second one into the next stitch. Then number 3 into the next one, number 4 into the next one, and do this until you have 12. So I have worked my 12 double crochets to start the round, and now we are going to work our first puff stitch flower. So we're going to do 12 double crochets and then our first puff stitch flower. So to begin your flower, you want to chain 3. So chain 1, 2 and 3. And now we're going to go into this first chain that we worked, so the third from the hook, so 1, 2, 3, and into this first chain we are going to work 1 puff stitch. So we're going to work 1 puff stitch into the first chain of the chain 3. So to do a puff stitch, you want to yarn over and go into the first chain, and then yarn over and pull up a loop, and then we're going to do that again. Yarn over, go into the same chain, so the same chain that you just went into, and pull up a loop, then yarn over and go down into the same chain and do that a third time. So we have done that 3 times. You want to do that a 4th time, so yarn over and go down into the same chain again and pull up a loop for a 4th time, and then you want to do that for a 5th and final time. Yarn over, go into the same chain you just went into and pull up a loop. So we have yarned over, gone into the chain and pulled up a loop 5 times, and you should now have 11 loops on your hook, so 11 loops. And usually to finish off a puff stitch we would yarn over and pull through all of these 11 loops, but we're not going to do that for the puff stitch flower. We're going to move on to the next puff stitch. So leave all 11 loops on your hook. So you're going to work your next puff stitch into this stitch here. So here we have the double crochet worked into this one, and then we have the next stitch along, and into this stitch we're going to work a second puff stitch in the exact same way as we did this one. So yarn over, go into the stitch and pull up a loop 5 times. So go into this stitch here, yarn over, go into the stitch, the next one, and pull up a loop. Then yarn over, go down into the same stitch and pull up a loop for a second time. Then do that a 3rd time, and we're always going into the same stitch. Then do that for a 4th time, and then yarn over, go down into the same stitch and pull up a loop for a 5th time. So there we have 2 puff stitches on our hook, but we're not going to finish this one either. We're not going to yarn over and pull through these loops. We're going to move on to our 3rd puff stitch for the puff stitch flower. So our next puff stitch is going to be worked into this stitch here. So we have just worked into this one, and you want to skip the next 2 stitches. So skip this one, and our next one is going to be worked into this stitch. So skip 2 stitches and work a puff stitch into this stitch. So yarn over, skip the 2 stitches and go into the next one and work a puff stitch. So pull up a loop once, go down into the same stitch and pull up a second loop, and do this 5 times in total. So like that, so I have yarned over, gone into the stitch and pulled up a loop 5 times for my 3rd puff stitch. So now you should have 3 puff stitches on your hook, 1, 2 and 3, and you want to yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook. So do this very carefully, go through all of the loops on your hook, and this may be a bit tricky, so just go through them one by one and go through every single loop that is on your hook. So like that, and then you want to pull your yarn really tight, so pull it tight to bring your puff stitches together like that, and then chain 2. So we're going to chain 1 and 2 to lock our puff stitches into place, and you can see we are forming the flower. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the center of the puff stitch flower here, so into the center, and we're going to work another puff stitch. So yarn over and go into the center and pull up a loop, and do that a second time. So do that a second time there. I just dropped my loops, and I'm going to do that a 3rd time, then a 4th, and then finally a 5th. So there I have the start of my puff stitch, and this time I'm actually going to complete the puff stitch. So yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook to complete this puff stitch, and then chain 2 again. And then to finish off this stitch, you want to do one last puff stitch into the center. So yarn over and go back down into the center and work another puff stitch, so your final puff stitch of the flower. So just in the same way as we have done all of our other puff stitches, like that. Then yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook to complete the puff stitch. So there we have one last puff stitch into the center of our flower, and overall we have 5 puff stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have completed the flower. So to do a puff stitch flower, you want to chain 3, work 1 puff stitch into the first chain, but do not complete the puff stitch, so do not yarn over and pull through all of the loops. Instead, go down to the next stitch and work your 2nd puff stitch, again not completing the puff stitch either. Then skip 2 stitches and work your 3rd puff stitch into the next stitch, and don't complete this one either, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 of these puff stitches, completing them all together at the same time. Then chain 2, then work 1 puff stitch into the center of the flower and chain 2, and then work your last puff stitch back into the center again. And that is how you do a puff stitch flower. And to do a puff stitch, yarn over, go into the stitch and pull up a loop 5 times. So there we have our flower. So we did 12 double crochets and then a puff stitch flower. And you simply want to repeat that again and again and again for round 2. So we're going to do 12 double crochets, puff stitch flower, 12 double crochets, puff stitch flower, and our puff stitch flower is worked over 4 stitches. So along with our 12 double crochets, that gives us the multiple of 16 that we chained at the beginning. So keep repeating that again and again for round 2. 12 double crochets, puff stitch flower. So we have finished our flower, so we're going to begin our next repetition. So yarn over and go into the next stitch here and work 1 double crochet. So this is your first of the 12. Then work 1 double crochet into the next stitch and do this 12 times. So we're moving on to number 3, then 4, and all the way up to 12. So there I have done 12 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So now I can move on to my next puff stitch flower, and we're going to work this in the exact same way as we worked the last one. So chain 3, 1, 2 and 3, then go down into this first stitch here and do your first puff stitch, but do not complete the puff stitch. So yarn over and go down into the first stitch and pull up a loop and do that 5 times all into the same stitch. So like that, so I have done that 5 times, but I am not going to yarn over and pull through these loops. I'm going to move on to my next puff stitch, and the next one is going to be worked into this stitch here. So this is the next one along from the one that we worked into. So the next one, yarn over and go into this stitch and work a puff stitch in the exact same way. Yarn over and go into the stitch, pull up a loop 5 times. So there's 3 and 4 and 5. So there we have our second puff stitch, but do not complete this one either. And now we're going to skip 2 stitches, skip 1 and 2 and move on to this stitch here, and into this stitch we're going to work our third puff stitch. So skip 2 and then yarn over and go into the next stitch and work your next puff stitch in the exact same way. So there we have done 3 puff stitches, 1, 2 and 3, and you want to yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook. So pull through every single loop on your hook very carefully. Make sure that you do not drop your yarn. So pull through all of the loops like this. So pull through them all and then pull your yarn tight. It's important that you pull it tight, otherwise the center will be a big hole. So pull it tight and then chain 2. Chain 1 and 2. And then into this center we're going to do 1 puff stitch. So do 1 puff stitch into the center of your flower. Like that. And then actually complete this one. So yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook to complete the puff stitch. Like that. And then chain 2 again. Now go back down into the center and work your final puff stitch into the center. And then once you have done that, yarn over and pull through all of the loops on your hook, and there we have completed the flower. And then we can begin our next repetition. So like that, so I have done 12 double crochets, and now we're going to do our next puff stitch flower in the exact same way. So just continue to do that all the way around for round 2. 12 double crochets, puff stitch flower, 12 double crochets, puff stitch flower. So I have just finished working that all the way around for round 2, and you should finish off by working one last flower. The flower should be the last thing that you worked. So I have just finished that last flower, and now we're going to finish off the round with a slip stitch into the first double crochet that we worked. So here is the first double crochet that we worked. Insert your hook into the stitch and work a slip stitch. So there we have finished round 2, and the side that we just worked is actually the wrong side, and if you turn it round the other way, you can see our puff stitch flowers kind of stick out, and that is what we want. So now we're ready to begin round 3. So we are now on to round 3 of our scarf, and to begin round 3 you want to chain 1. And round 3 is just a simple round of double crochet. We're just going to do 1 double crochet into every single stitch around. So yarn over and go down into this first stitch here, as our chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and work 1 double crochet. Then work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and just continue this all the way around for round 3. 1 double crochet into each stitch, and at the end of this round you should have the same number of stitches as you chained. So as I chained 96 stitches, I should have 96 double crochets worked in round 3. So just do 1 double crochet into each stitch around, and then when you get to your flower you need to work 4 double crochets into your flower, as each flower took up 4 stitches last round. So 4 double crochets. So this stitch here is actually the first double crochet of the next set of double crochets here. So don't class that one as the flower, and then you see you have these stitches along the top, and you want to work into this one, this one, this one, and this one. Do not go into these chains here. Work 1, 2, 3, 4 for the flower. So I have worked my last double crochet of this set of 12 here. I'm then going to yarn over and go on up to this one here, this stitch, go into the top of this stitch and work 1 double crochet. So work 1 double crochet into this stitch, then do 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and the next one, and the next one. And there we have 4 double crochets for our flower, like that. And then this next stitch here is the first double crochet of this set of 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So then just go straight down into this one and work your 12 double crochets, and just continue that all the way around, 1 double crochet into each stitch around. It's very simple when you're working along the sets of 12, and then when you get to the flowers, go into this one, this one, this one and this one along the top. So 4 into each flower. So I have just finished working that all the way around for round 3, and to finish off this round you want to go into the first double crochet that you worked and work a slip stitch. So work a slip stitch into the first double crochet, and I would recommend going back and checking that you have the same number of stitches around as you chained, and if you do, then we are ready to begin round 4. So we are now on to round 4 of our scarf, and to begin round 4 you want to chain 1. And now round 4 is very similar to round 2. So in round 2 we did 12 double crochets and then the puff stitch flower. And in round 4 we're going to do 6 double crochets, then the puff stitch flower, and then we're going to do another 6. So we're doing the exact same thing as in round 2. However, instead of doing 12 double crochets, puff stitch flower, we're doing 6 double crochets, puff stitch flower, 6 double crochets, and that will give us our flower positioned in the middle of these sets of 12. And that is what we're going to repeat all the way along for round 4. So you want to yarn over and go down into the first stitch and work 1 double crochet, and then go into the next one and work a second one, and do this up until you have 6 6 double crochets. So like that. So there I have 6 double crochets, and now we're going to work our first puff stitch flower, which we're going to work in the exact same way as we did in round 2. So start off with a chain 3 and then work your puff stitch flower just in the same way as we did time and time again in round 2. So there I have just finished my puff stitch flower. So we did 6 double crochets puff stitch flower, and now we're going to work another 6 double crochets. So go into the next stitch and work 1 double crochet and do this up until you have 6. So like that, so 6 more double crochets, and you want to repeat that again and again and again for round 4. 6 double crochets, puff stitch flower in the same way as we did in round 2, then 6 more double crochets. So now we're going to work 6 more double crochets, puff stitch flower, 6 double crochets, 6 double crochets, puff stitch flower, 6 double crochets, all the way around. So we have finished our first repetition. So we have just finished off by doing 6 double crochets, and we're going to begin our next one. So go down into the next stitch and work your first double crochet and do this 6 times, then do your puff stitch flower, then 6 double crochets, and repeat that all the way around for round 4. So I have finished working that all the way around for round 4. And to finish off this round, you want to work a slip stitch into the first double crochet that you worked at the beginning of the round. So finish off round 4 with a slip stitch, and at the end of this round you should still have the same number of stitches around as you chained at the very beginning. And now we are ready to move on to the next round. So at this point we have completed rounds 1 through to 4. So we have done rounds 1, 2, 3 and 4. And for the rest of your scarf, you simply want to repeat those 4 rounds again and again and again until you feel that your scarf is tall enough or long enough. So we have just finished round 4. So now you want to move back on to round 1 and do round 1 again, then round 2, then round 3, then round 4, and then you will repeat it again. Round 1, round 2, round 3, then round 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So keep repeating those 4 rounds for as many times as you like. And rounds 1 and 3 are just rounds of double crochet, but rounds 2 and 4 are the rounds of double crochet with the puff stitch flowers. So you can go back in the video and rewatch those rounds for as many times as you like, or you may be able to remember them, but just continue to repeat those 4 rounds again and again and again until you feel that your scarf or your cowl is long enough. And to finish off your cowl, you may want to do one last round of double crochet after you work your last round of round 4. So make sure that you finish off with a round of double crochet instead of a round with the puff stitch flowers, and that will give you a nice even edge. So just continue to repeat the 4 rounds until your scarf is big enough. So I have finished repeating those rounds again and again and again. Then I fastened off, so cut my yarn and pulled my yarn out and my hook, and then I weaved all of my ends into the inside of my scarf, and I have finished. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and found it easy to follow. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos, and thanks again for watching.